Moving right along, Commissioner Young.
Thank you, President Walensky. On behalf of the Planning Committee, I'd like to move forward Resolution 2015-276, which is a resolution approving the concept design for waterworks as a sub-area of Mill Ruins Park within the Central Mississippi Riverfront Regional Park.
Second.
And I'm hoping that staff has some additional information for us. I think there were a couple of questions hanging in committee that we said we would answer at the board meeting.
President Walensky and Commissioner Tabb, as a part of the packet, we provided some information on the questions that were asked, and I can run through that information fairly quickly. And if there's some clarifying questions you need, we can get into that. And we also have Bruce Chamberlain here who can speak to some of this this as well. One of the questions that was asked related to the programming of activities in waterworks, and is it too much for the park to handle? In the information that we provided, we made some comparison to the size of this park to what goes on at Minneapolis Falls, the kinds of recreation activities and the population or the visitorship at each one of those, and tried to make some fairly direct comparison. And it does compare favorably with what goes on at Minneapolis Falls Park. And I'm going to move through this quickly because there were some questions and we provided quite a bit of information. We do also talk about that intensity of use relative to environmental condition, and we had some comparisons again between what exists at the waterworks area right now and what would be proposed in the future. And again, there are enhancements proposed, and the one that's variable is the tree cover, and that's allowing for newly planted trees to eventually reestablish. Another line of questions related to the grove of trees along First Street, and can those trees be preserved? The forestry staff met with a tree preservation commissioner and a Parks Foundation staff, and we looked at particularly at the condition of trees and the potential impacts of trees on the ruins. And of the 55 trees that are over 6 inches in caliper or diameter, there are about 20 trees that we believe will be impacting the mill ruins, and a few other trees that, very few other trees, I believe, that would not be able to be perpetuated. And if there's a deeper question on this, I'll ask Bruce to come up. But it is important that as we look at this, we have a tree replacement strategy that looks at replacing trees that are lost, as we note here, with high-quality, long-lasting, hardy trees. And there's a series of other things we can look at relative to grading strategies and implementation of other structures. There's a question about where people will park when the lots are removed. And we recognize that in the entirety of the central riverfront, there's only a small fraction of the 2.3 million users per year who can actually park within the bounds of the park. And we characterized that when we look at the number of parking spaces that will be lost to the construction of Waterworks Park, we would lose about 64 stalls. But we are actually gaining, through an action the board took, I believe, in April, gaining the use of 70 stalls off-site in the Woonerf, which will eventually have a direct trail connection back into Waterworks. There was also a question about the lock and dam, and this is one where I think, Bruce, were you going to come and speak to the lock and dam and the work you're doing with the National Park Service? That'd be great.
Commissioners, Bruce Chamberlain with the Minneapolis Parks Foundation. I think what is exciting about this is that the National Park Service and the Corps of Engineers are pursuing kind of reimagining what can happen or what will happen on the lock and dam structure. And the Central Riverfront master planning process really dealt with this issue also. So what we envision happening is really a concurrent approach to how Waterworks moves forward in conjunction with how the lock and dam future moves forward, and finding synergies between the two. If it means relocating some of the program uses at Waterworks onto the lock and dam structure, we're very open to that, working with Park Board on those possibilities. So certainly, absolutely.
The last question that was asked about was about the canoe and kayak landing, and as Bruce was reflecting on the Central Riverfront Master Plan, we talk about that, about canoe and kayak landings and portages as a part of the Central Riverfront Master Plan, in particular as we look at the closing of the locks. And even yesterday when we were on a tour of certain projects with representatives from Minnesota Management Budget, they commented on the change in use in the upper riverfront, and with the barges gone, how many more canoes and kayaks we're actually seeing out there. So we believe that really is a critical piece of the Waterworks proposal.
Thank you. So
We're not in committee, we're at the full board, so that would be me.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
We forget.
Young. So at this time, Commissioner Tabb.
Thank you. Thank you, President Walensky. I know that we had talked about the fact that what's gone on at the lock and dam is something that's relatively recent and really happened sort of after this project got started. And so I would like to add what I think is I would like to make an amendment which I think is a non-controversial one. I have passed it by the Parks Foundation folks, just to make sure that we codify, if you will, in our whereases and resolves, the fact that we are interested in working on this this piece, this opportunity at the Lock and Dam collaboratively, and therefore I would offer the amendment to this. And I will read it. I actually had copies for everybody, but somewhere between that door and my desk, I have managed to lose them.
They are here. I had no idea what they were.
All right. Okay.
Just sat there.
Sorry, folks. Whereas the Regional Park Master Plan Upper Mill Ruins Park initiatives call for collaboration with partner agencies to create a visitor center on the Lock and Dam structure. Whereas the National Park Service and Corps of Engineers are exploring opportunities for improving the visitor experience at the Lock and Dam more quickly than anticipated at the time the plan was adopted. Resolved that the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board will collaborate with the Minneapolis Parks Foundation, the National Park Service, the Corps of Engineers, and other partners to take advantage of new opportunities as they arrive at the Lock and Dam as part of the Waterworks design.
Second.
All right. Okay, questions on Commissioner Tabb's amendment? Commissioner Freeland.
Oh, that's
All right. Okay, Commissioner
next
Young.
in line.
Thank you. I'm not going to speak to. I'm sorry. I'm going to speak to the full motion,
Okay.
not to this. Not to this
So
one.
do we have any questions on Commissioner Tabb's motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Questions to the newly amended motion. Commissioner Vreeland, do you want to go right back in, or you're done, Commissioner Tabb?
I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Vreeland.
Yes. In the materials we were provided, there was a comparison between Minnehaha Park and our proposed waterworks that indicated that the proposal would have a playground. From what, can someone tell me what we're building or not, and what a playground means?
President Walensky and Commissioner Vreeland, the master plan or the concept plan talks about the use of the top portions of the foundations of the mills as play opportunities without getting into specifics about what the actual play opportunities are. So it's really, I think, trying to recreate a play opportunity in the midst of the ruins. I don't think we would necessarily imagine this to be the traditional playground that we might have at other parks, but something probably more fitting with the character, and it's something of the character of the mills and the site, and certainly something that we'll be looking at more intensely as we get into the final design.
I am an advocate of play, but I just don't want to go into this and make an approval of something where people are expecting slides and swings and a new created traditional kind of park playground. That's not what I would call it. So play is good. Playground isn't what I'm expecting. And I've said this before, and I'm saying it. Play
area, interactive play.
A place for fun. So I've said this before, but since we're approaching the finish line, I'd really like to see more trees and some separation. Really work on the separation of space, atmosphere, microclimates. Taking a motorcycle ride on the river is very cool because I'm outside, or a bike ride, because there's all these microclimates, and I want to make sure that you're in a different world on one side of the street and the other, and I think that's quite possible, and I think it's advantageous. And I still think that the seating area should be less formal than what I've seen thus far, and broken up, and functional but funky.
Thank you. Commissioner Young.
Thank you, President Walensky. I will be voting no on this resolution, and I wanted to kind of explain why. And it is not because I don't think the concept design's kind of cool. It is kind of cool. I'm very concerned about all the things we're talking about putting down there. We've already drawn millions of people with it being pretty basic and simple. And I'd like things to stay more basic and simple in our park system rather than us just filling every square inch with something that people have to do or want to do. People go down there to look at that bridge and those arches and walk across there. I stand by that we don't need an amphitheater on one side when we have an amphitheater over by the pavilion on the other side. I just think it's too much. I hear what you're saying about canoeing and kayaking. And having seen the beautiful, beautiful water ballet with all the different kinds of boats that can be on the river, it is astounding. But, you know, once upon a time we talked about, and I've said this, I think, to the board before, one of the reasons that the Central Riverfront was able to be such a success was the fact that we had our goal was to get people off the lakes, because our lakes are dying from overuse of millions and millions of people. Now we're getting millions and millions of people to the river. And I'm just afraid, I worry about overuse and overactivity rather than, I guess I'm the old-fashioned nature, open green space, go for a nice walk on Sunday person. And so I just think that there's some good things in here. I'm thrilled about the trees, and I think there's some good things. I'm very concerned about the parking. I'm very concerned about disabled and people in wheelchairs and all of that, because that's the other thing. That was another thing on the lakes. People taking their grandparents, want to take a visit. They want to go down to that river, and making it easy enough for people to do that. So I'm still having some issues, and so I think it's best that in this case, at this time, I'm going to have to vote no.
Okay, seeing no other lights, all in favor of the amended original motion that is now our motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, that passes.